All right. Hello, that's Dr. Carver. And today we are going to talk about new chapters about the heart. We're going to talk about the anatomy of the heart, the superficial anatomy, the internal anatomy of the heart, the blood circulations within the heart, and that will be in the part one of this chapter. And in the part two, we will be talking about the physiology of the heart. So let's get started. So when you are talking about the heart, you have to think about the two circuits that the airplane role. This is the pathway of the blood through the heart. We have the systemic pathway that carry the blood to the rest of the body. And we have the pulmonary circuit that will carry the blood to the lung. So think about it like whatever, when you are run out of oxygen, when somebody is running out of oxygen, it becomes blue. So anything that is blue over here, it's a blood circulating poor in oxygen. And anything that is red, it's a blood that is very rich on oxygen. We will come back to this later on, but all what you have to know here that there are four chambers of the heart, two atriums, right and left. And we have a right ventricle and the left ventricle. The right ventricle will collect the blood from the systemic circuit, and the right ventricle pump the blood to the pulmonary circuit, while the left ventricle collect the blood from the pulmonary circuit, and the left ventricle will pump the blood to the systemic circuit. From the aorta. So we will come back to this about the blood circulation later on. So let's first talk about how, where the location of the heart. So next slide. So we can find the heart in the mediastinum between the second rib and the fifth rib intercostal space. And the size of it actually is the size of a man fit, weight less than 1 pound. And it's a posterior to the sternum. If you remember, that's the sternum, Physiology 2401. And it's posterior to the sternum and anterior to the vertebral columns. As you can see over here, when you want to listen to the heartbeat, you always listen in the left part for the simple reason that the 2/3 of the heart exists in this left side, most of it. So this is the location of the heart within the thoracic cage. And it's also posterior, superior to the diaphragm. It's superior to the diaphragm. We have the base of the heart, and we have the apex part of the heart, which is near to the fifth intercostal space. So the base is leans toward the right shoulder. The apex is to point toward the left hip. This is just a sample location of the heart. Remember the 24-1, that all the organs are within a cavity. And the pericardium is double lining of the pericardial cavity. We have the superior, the superficial fibrous pericardium that function to protect the heart and also attach the heart to the surrounding structure and also prevent the overfilling of the heart. And we have two layers of serous membrane. The visceral pericardium, that's the inner layer of the pericardium. And the parietal pericardium, that's the outer layer that forms the inner layer of the pericardial sac. So in this side, so this is a section of this little part. We zoom it in. So we have the parietal layer of the pericardium and the epicardium, which is the visceral part of the pericardium. And between is this, what you are seeing over here in dark. That's the pericardial cavity. And we have the myocardium, which represents the muscle scar. And the endocardium. So the epicardium, the myocardium, and the endocardium are going to make the heart wall. And for the muscle, the cardiac muscle is, as you can see, it's a striated muscle. It's not a smooth muscle. It's like the skeletal muscle, but there are differences. It's a small size than the skeletal muscle. That's myocardia. That's, if you remember, the epicardium, which is the interlocated disc. That's the biggest difference. And the interlocated disc with this, I have technical issue over here. Okay, you can hear me very well now. So it's a small size. We have you have a single central nucleus, as you can see in here, and it's a branching interconnections between cells. We can see here some little branching over here, and you have this intercalated disc. And if we zoom in into intercalated disc, we can see these junctions that they are securing between the muscle cells, like the desmosomes or the gap junctions, desmosomes or the gap junctions. And those help to propagate the action potential when an impulse arrives to contract the muscle. So this is about the So let's go to the internal features associated with the heart. We have 4 chambers, 2 superior atria, and 2 inferior ventricles. I love to see that by the pictures. So we have these 2 superior chambers and 2 inferior chambers. So we have the atria, right and left atria, and we have the right ventricle and left ventricle. So I love this picture. This is a diagram. So we are going to look at all these internal features of the heart in this picture. So let's start. So we have the right atrium. The right atriums, we have these big tenate muscles that you can see over here. Left atriums. The ventricle, right ventricle, left ventricle. You have differences in the form of the ventricle. If you see here, the right ventricle is a form of a V, and this one is more like a rounded form. And also the wall is very thick in the left ventricle and thin in the right ventricle. They have a strong muscle on the left for the simple reason that it pumps more blood coming in from the pulmonary vein, and you have to get more muscle to push all this blood out of the heart through the aorta. But that's not mean that one of them have more blood than the other. No, they all carry the same amount of blood. So we have the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. This is one big, huge, big vessel. The superior vena cava is the one that So let's go back to the chambers because I feel like I'm going too fast over here. So we have the right atriums, the left atriums. They are actually connected by anter-atrium septum. It's not showing here because it's hiding, but these big vessels. And the right ventricle and the left ventricle, they are separated by the interventricular septum. So they hold both the left and the right, they hold the same volume of blood, but the left have more muscular he needed to push, I told you, this blood out through the aorta to the systemic circuit. Oxygenated blood can reach the other parts of the body. So you need those muscles to exert enough of force to blow out those blood. And so for the right atrium and right ventricle, he received blood from the right atriums, and the right atrium, this blood came from this big vessel that is the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. So the two ventricles, remember this, hold the same amount of blood. We have 4 valves associated with the heart. We have atrioventricular valves that separate the atria and the ventricle. So atrioventricular, the right and the right ventricles. It's called tricuspid because it have 4 cups. You have 3 cups. And the atrioventricular valve that separate left with the left atrium with the left ventricle. It's a bicuspid. We call it mitral valve. Just 2 cups. And we have 2 semilunar valve that separate the ventricles from the blood vessels. So we have the pulmonary similar valve that's in the pulmonary trunk. And we have the aortic valve that separates the left ventricle with the aorta. So the flow in one direction. So we want the blood to flow from right atrium to the right ventricle and never from the right ventricle back to the atrium. So this is what is this valve. So open, they let the blood come in to the right ventricle, then they close. So the blood is not going back. So we flow only in one direction. And we have also the fossa ovalis. It's like, actually, I don't want to say the word, but it's actually like a hole. So all this blood that is not rich in oxygen enter the right atrium. So this is why this fossa ovalis, it's helped those poor oxygenated blood to enter the right atriums. So once this poor oxygenated blood is in the right atrium, he goes through the ventricles. At this time, the valve, atraventricular valves, the tricuspid close. And from the right ventricle, he goes to the pulmonary trunk, right? And then the oxygenated blood came into the left atriums and going through the aorta and going out to the systemic circuit. The poor oxygenated blood go to the pulmonary circuit, get oxygenated, come back to the heart, go to the other part of the body. And the poor oxygenated blood came in the atrium to the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. So it's always. So they came in from the systemic system to the superior and the inferior vena cava. As I said, I'm very slow here because I want you to admire this diagram. When the right atrium is full of blood, it will push, contract, push to the right ventricle. This so when this one is contracting, pushing the tricuspid valve to be open, this one is closed. And when then is fill up, this right atrium close, and this valve, pulmonary valve, will open. So when he contracts, he push against this pulmonary valve, he will open. And through the left pulmonary arteries, they will carry away this poor oxygenated blood from the heart. So they will go to the lung, drop off CO2, pick up the oxygen. And then he's coming back through the left pulmonary vein, go into the left atriums. And once the atrium is full of blood, gets contracted, all right, he will push contractions, push to open this mitral valve. and when it's open, he will fill in the left ventricles. And during this time, the aortic valve is closed. Cannot see it over here, but this is just a little part of it is closed. So once this left ventricle build up on blood, he contract, he will push on the aortic valve, and this mitral valve will close, and this will open, pushing the water outside of the heart through the aortic artery and bringing the oxygenated blood to the systemic circuit. So it's a very nice show. If this you cannot understand, then please watch it again or send in me a message, and I will be more than happy to assist you. So this obviously was the anterior side and the blood circulating heart. And they want to point out also so let's what we didn't talk about. Oh, about those sulcus, those grooves. They are just full of fat and some vessels. We have coronary sulcus that is actually separating the atriums with the ventricles. And we have also interventricular sulcus that is very rich on fat. The yellow things is fat. There's the grooves and the rich on vessels too. Before I forget, remember that artery carry blood away from the heart, and ventricles bring the ventricles and veins bring the blood into the heart. I think that's it. So let's see what else we can talk about. We talk already about that. We talk about this too. Talk already about the major landmark. The right antrum, I told you already when we show you that it contained the pectinate muscles. Also called tricuspid, we talk about that. I'm skipping because we talk about all this. The right ventricle contained the trabecular cornea, which is a muscular ridge, and it include the moderator band. We talk about this. We talk about the pulmonary circuits, the left atrium. We talk about that already. We talk about how the left ventricle, the difference between the left. I have some quizzes that I want you to look at it. Semilunar valves, aortic and pulmonars. Okay. The arteries carry the blood away from the heart. The vein carry the blood to the heart. The capillaries are the network between the arteries and veins. And the pathway of the blood to the heart is two major circuits, the pulmonary circuits that carry the blood to and from the lung, and the pulmonary circuit that carry, systemic circuit that carry the blood away from the heart to the rest of the body. And whatever is blue, it's very poor in oxygen, and red is very rich on oxygen. So the blood, the right atriums collect the blood from the systemic circuit through this inferior vena cava or superior vena cava, and also through, if you remember, through this fossa ovalis. There was a fossa that was open at the fetal age, but it closed later on during the development. And it carry, and then the blood, the right ventricles pump the blood to the pulmonary circuit through the pulmonary trunk, and go to the lung, get deposit there the CO2, capture the oxygen, and bring it to the lung through the pulmonary veins to the heart through the pulmonary veins from the left atriums. Left atrium collect this blood and pump it into the left ventricles. The left ventricles will pump this blood-rich oxygen through the aorta to the rest of the body, in other words, to the systemic circuits. So when you look at all the slides, it's going to be like a routine, very, very easy routines. And during this process, there are this circulation of the blood within the heart is under control of those valves. If one valve's open, the other valves must be closed, etc., etc. So yeah, So let's continue anatomy of the heart. Now we are going to talk about the blood supply for the heart, the coronary circulations. That's that's how the heart get the supply of the blood through this coronary circulation. It delivers when the heart is relaxed. The left ventricles receive most of the coronary blood supply. So this is why the mass in the left ventricles are very, very strong, more than the right ventricles. And the wall of it is very thick also. So we talk about that. So those arteries in the heart are originated from the root of the aorta. So we have, and they are able to auto-regulate and maintain the coronary flow, and commonly affected by arteriosclerosis. So we have the right coronary arteries, and if you see, they are really branched from the aorta, right coronary. And we have the left coronary arteries. So the right coronary arteries supply blood to the right atrium, portion of the both ventricles, right? And this is a pacemaker existing here. You also supply blood to it. Some cells that we call sinoatrial cells, they are very, very important on originating an impulse. When they get stimulated, they are the ones that will originate an action potential and make the muscle, cardiac muscle, to contract. So, and they are going to also supply the blood to the marginal arteries. So they are going to be branched into marginal arteries, right? So we have the right ventricle artery, sorry. Right marginal arteries and interventricular arteries. So we see it over here much better. Marginal artery, posterior interventricular artery, marginal artery, and right coronary artery. Then the next is the left coronary artery. Supply the blood, of course, to the left ventricles and the left atrium, and also to the septum, the interventricular septum. It can be branched into two branches, circumflex artery and anterior interventricular artery. So it does have also two branches as well. The same thing as the right ventricular, the right coronary arteries. So this is the coronary So the coronary veins, so they are the ones that will collect the blood from the capillary beds. That's the coronary sinus. So he's the one that will bring blood to the right atriums for blood oxygenate from fossa. So the coronary sinus empty into the right atrium formed by the marginal cardiac vein. The great cardiac vein of the anterior interventricular sulcus, the middle cardiac vein in the posterior interventricular sulcus, and the small cardiac vein from the inferior margin. Several anterior cardiac veins empty directly into the right atrium anteriorly. So this is just another picture. So for the supply for the blood, I really want you to know all these major veins and arteries, and where they are originated from, and where they bring the blood to. So let's move now to the next part of this chapter, which is the conduction system. And before, I want a little remind you of the cardiac muscle. We said that it's straight, branched, short, right? You have one central nucleus. If you remember, we saw that in the slide earlier. It contains a lot of mitochondria. And you have also, like the skeletal muscle, you have a Z disc, E band, I band. If you remember, the tubules are also there, but they are less numerous than the skeletal muscles. And sarcostic reticulum, sarcoplasmic reticulum is simpler. It doesn't have any, if you remember, triad. So when the heart beats, a single contraction of the heart, the entire heart contracts in a series, first the atria, then the ventricles. And we have in the heart those, if you remember, the interlocated disc, this is the one that contains those gap junctions that play a role on passing the potential actions easier between those muscle cells. So this is why when one cell gets contracted, the entire cells get contracted in the same time. The entire cell contract in a series. So those gap junctions not only hold the cells together, they are interconnected, but also propagation of the action potential. and to communicate also those junctions. So this, we see it earlier on a slide. So we have two types of cardiac muscles. We have the conduction system that control and coordinate the heartbeats, and we have the contractile cells that produce contractions that propel the blood. Okay. And before I go any further, I want you to remember that the excitation and contractions coupling happen as soon as one calcium bound to the tropin, he causes the filament to slide, and depolarizations wave. When depolarization happens, that means the muscle is contracted. The depolarization wave travels down the T-tubules, causing the sarcoplasmic reticulum to release more calcium. So we are. This is exactly what's happening with this similarities to the skeletal muscle contractions. I remember that when the membrane get depolarized, they have some pump that they are voltage dependent, that they are going to be playing a role. Exactly the same things that we see it in 2401 with the skeletal muscle contractions. So once the calcium has been released with the sarcoplasmic reticulum, it's bound to the tropin, making those muscles to slide and to contract. So the cardiac muscle cells, as I said, they have two kinds of myocytes. Contractile cells are responsible for the contractions, and the conduction cells. So they are, but those two kinds of myocytes, they are myocyte or muscle cells. So we have the one that they are contraction cells. They're responsible for the contractions, as I said. But also they are one that we are non-contractible, but they spontaneously depolarize. They initiate the depolarization of the entire heart and do not need nerve system because the contractions is independent of the nerve system. This is unconscious, spontaneously. So initiate these cells, we call them the pacemakers. So the heart contracts as a unit. All the myocyte cells, contract as a unit or non-contract. Contraction of all the cardiac muscles ensure effective pumping actions, but the skeletal muscle contracts independently. The inflow of calcium from the extracellular fluid trigger the calcium release from the sarcoplasmic reticulum and depolarize open slowly the calcium channel in the sarcoma, allowing more calcium to enter the cells. So, and the extracellular calcium then causes the sarcoplasmic reticulum to release its intracellular calcium. And this is quite a little different from the skeletal muscle. And during this contractions, we are going to see that we have two. So let's talk about how these conduction systems happen. So the cardiac muscles begin with an action and impulse coming at the sinoatrial node that transmit through the conduction system. And they are transmitted through the conduction system, producing an action potential in cardiac muscle cells. And we can actually register this electrical event through an electrocardiogram. I'm going to stop here for this part because it's going to be too long a video to watch. So, and then I will continue with this conduction system in the next video. Thank you.